There's about 35,000 of us guys out here at Mare Island. We're working 24 hours a day, fixing up busted ships and building new ones. Talk about your total war effort. Brother, we got it here at Mare Island.
Hello, everyone. I'm Justin Crosley.
I'm Ryan Gibbons.
Kent Fortner.
And you're listening to Battleships to Beer, 10 years of Mare Island Brewing Company. And we're on episode 6. The last one was fascinating to me, as they all really have been. But getting into the war history of Mare Island and how Mare Island Brewing Company associates that, it's incredible stuff to me. So I'm proud to be here with you guys. How's your day going?
It's going well, Justin. Actually,
Okay.
You were saying proud to be here. I got to tell you, this has become, so we're on episode, I think this is 6 now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're kind of halfway down through our target we're doing. We got this little ritual going where, actually I came from somewhere else today. So Ryan and I drove down here somewhere, but it's like 30 minutes from the brewing company down this direction, whatever. But I never really spent any time in this little downtown Concord area that you're in right here. And so for listener out there, and I use that the singular because it might only be one. Actually, no, your whole family's listening, right, Ryan?
My mom's going to.
Yeah, we got at least a dozen.
Okay.
We got at least a dozen coming
There we
up.
go.
But if you're, you should know, just got this. This is like the ultimate man cave in here. It's the coolest setting. It's got the little waffle foam on the walls. We got 5 microphones here, so we could bring in some people and have a party if we wanted to.
Yeah.
And he's got the shade pulled down right now. But typically, we can look out and see everybody out in the hop grenade and. We'll get ourselves a flatbread. Like, this has become a party for us. And I just want to thank you for bringing us down here, hosting this thing, and frankly, being excellent at keeping us in line on the whole thing.
I actually also remember this was like one of our first tap takeovers. So you actually, you guys believed in us early on. We had a marketing guy that wanted to be more. And so he lived in the area. And he said, I think I can get into the hop grenade. And I was like, man, if you can get into the hop grenade, that's like, we've made it. And so he apparently convinced you to have us come down and do a tap takeover. And I still remember had a little hard time finding parking at first, and then I found that sweet parking garage down here. But this place is special. What you got here, man?
Well, thanks for saying that. We do love our location. It's got a little bit of everything here. Certainly was rocking and rolling when we got here ourselves 10 years ago.
Yeah,
that's the other thing that's fun for me hanging out with you guys is we're kind of celebrating the same tenure. You know. And so, well, it's fun to have you, and I definitely have built I built the studio I wanted, right? It's my dream studio. And, of course, having it in a bar was part of that dream.
I mean, it's kind of cool because when the shade's up, you feel like you're kind of in a fishbowl. But,
we call it the fishbowl studio.
Yeah, you definitely can, you're the voice of beer for us around here, so we really appreciate that.
There's a slight design flaw in your place for me. There's on the side of the bar, it's beautiful. But there's a kind of a service bar where you're supposed to go put your glasses. Well, you don't. The bartender or the waitress does at the end. But it's like a perfect piece of like original wood that's been sanded down, but it's sloped. Like, when people set things on it, does it just slide off and break all the time? Because every time I've busted my own dishes when we've been here, I'm about to
hit that edge.
I've always hit that edge. Like I'm like. Was this intentional?
Yeah.
Every
now and then, my former partner really wanted that live edge look, right? And not only that, she had, how do I put this? Great taste, but would go to great lengths to fulfill those dreams. I'm pretty sure that piece of wood is imported from Hawaii. Yeah. There was probably some endangered species living in it. She really went all out. And so one of the pitfalls is the
function's a little bit suspect on that one little piece.
But it's got a story. So
it does have a story.
Every time a glass breaks, you just kind of salute to the Hawaiian, endangered species.
Yeah, whatever we killed
edge.
to get that. Yeah. That's what you do. Yeah, it's pouring a little out for our homies is really what it is.
Awesome. Well, I brought a beer. Should we start with a beer?
Absolutely.
All right, I'll open it up here. So what I brought today is our War Bond California Common.
Okay.
So,
are we allowed to say?
What is a California Common? We got to do that.
Good question. I was sitting here thinking, am I allowed to say steam beer at all?
Maybe now, right? But probably not.
Yeah, I don't know. So a California Common, this is actually my understanding, and Justin, you might have to chime in here, but this is one of the only styles that actually originated in the United States.
Yeah.
Most every beer that we know of, IPAs, golden ales, all those things originated elsewhere. But when the gold rush was going on during that time, the breweries in San Francisco, they would brew this beer with a lager strain, and they didn't have adequate cooling like we have these days. And so they would pump the wort over a heat exchanger on the roof, and the cold, cool fog air of the Bay Area would allow that wort to cool down and create steam. And so they would call it a steam beer at the time. And like I said, it's brewed with a lager yeast strain. It's actually brewed kind of similar to ale temperatures, a little bit cooler, but not all the way down to a lager temperature. And this was basically the beer of the Bay Area back in the day. Matter of fact, there was a brewery that was in Vallejo. The last brewery before we came in was called the Solano Brewing Company, and they closed down in 1918, I believe. Sounds it was. Right. And it was because of the General Order 99 that Joseph Daniels had decreed. And when we came in town, that was the last. It was almost 100 years since a brewery came around, but they were famous for their steam beer.
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, come in, what was it, the 70s when
Fritz Maytag, truly of Maytag fame, by the way, listeners, if you don't know.
Absolutely. He purchased the famed Anchor Steam Brewery.
Yes.
And with his knowledge of trademarks and whatnot, he trademarked the style steam beer, to where no one else can call it a steam beer. It's now referred to as a California Common.
Yes. So, of course, you're allowed to brew it, but he made it so that no one else could call it that. And that's the famous Anchor Steam that some of you know and possibly love.
And some of us are crying about because, unfortunately, they closed their doors recently.
What do you know about that, Justin? Do you have any latest updates on that? You're kind of plugged in.
From the insider's perspective, not much, to be honest. But I heard the murmurs from the insiders that it will be resurrected. And then I recently read an article, actually, that somebody reported there is a billionaire coming in and looking to resurrect it, but they don't know what that looks like, what the time frame is, or even if it's a done deal. But there was legitimately a person or organization interested in taking it over.
Because it's really, I mean, I grew up drinking Anchor Steam. Like it is iconic in the Bay Area. And I have to say that when Sapporo took it over, I feel like they changed the label, which I get it. Everybody feels like something's going to be better. But part of, to me, the beauty of Anchor Steam was that sort of iconic label and history and everything else. But when that all happened, I'm sure we were one of the 600 different people. But I was like, Ryan, we should call him, see if we could buy the recipe and we could buy them. I had no interest in the real estate in downtown San Francisco. It's a very expensive place to brew. Right. And there's a whole bunch of it, but I was like, if they're going to part this thing out, we could carry on the tradition. Like, this is not too far from what we do.
We're a history beer brand.
Yeah, and we could figure out a way to carry on Anchor Steam or whatever. And I called 3 times, and I actually talked to, it's not receivership, I forget what they call it, something creditor or whatever. I talked to the group that was doing, they're like, yeah, we'll add you to the top of the list. You'll get the prospectus. We'll be back to you, whatever. Crickets. I've never gotten a call. Right. It's not like we probably don't have enough. We probably need 3 more zeros next to our name to be able to afford whatever it is. But we're not disqualified. I mean, we clearly have a track record. I can't believe it. And now it's been out of the market for, it's
almost a year now, I would say. I mean,
and what I like about your idea, by the way, is that I do feel that it's what the brand needs. There's a reason that Anchor failed. Of course, beer is cyclical. But we're seeing a part of the cycle where the popularity of beer is really, we don't know what it's going to be. It's changing. And then you add to that the style, right? The style is unique, and it's not, let's face it, it's not sexy. It doesn't have all the hops in it. It's not a double something. And so for it to exist as a full brewery brand again, that's a long road. That's a tough road. But to keep the style and the beer alive, I think you guys are spot on. I think that's a possibility.
Well, if anybody out there is listening and you're still selling Anchor Steam, I have to say, from a business person's perspective, every week that's out of the marketplace, the value of that thing is going down and down and down because they kind of closed the doors, and then there was months where it was still out there in the marketplace and being sold. I'm like, somebody's going to get a hold of this. They're going to get back out there, and they can resurrect this in a way that will make economic sustainability, make sense or whatever. Now I think it's a much trickier proposition. I mean, I can proudly say that War Bond California Common by the Maryland Brewing Company has replaced quite a few tap handles out there from Anchor Steam because it's a similar style in a lot of ways. We're kind of paying homage to it in some ways, and people love it. And that tap handle was doing thousands of dollars for them every week, and so they were like, what else is out there? But man,
that we can tell people, hey, this isn't it, but it's similar.
Yeah, I mean, the one we didn't. This was not a beer that all of a sudden we saw Anchor Steam going down, and we're like, we got to get one into the market. We released this a year prior to even hearing any grumbles about this, and it's one of the ones we're cracking into San Francisco for self distribution, and we get a lot of places. Swan Oyster Depot downtown in downtown San Francisco. They love having this beer on there because their customers, some of them don't even know that Anchor Steam's gone, but they like this style of beer with that seafood, and they love having that at that location. So it's been a fun one. Matter of fact, we came up with this beer in our beer club. We did. Yeah, this was.
Can I ask you before you tell that story how fresh this beer is?
This beer is. Let's see here.
We printed on the bottle.
Okay, there we go. Nice.
So this one is 12 days old.
And it shows. It is so delicious and bright. So to me, I would drink an Anchor, every couple times a year, right? And it was more nostalgia. This I would drink every day. It is such, so I know Ryan wasn't feeling good, but he has to try it right now.
He said, I'm going to just pour for you guys today, and here he goes.
I knew that it had to be that fresh. This is absolutely delicious, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing with that style of steam beer. There's not much outside of the box that you can really do.
Yeah.
When I don't know if every other brewer out there is doing it, but when we were going to work on this recipe, we brought in bottles of Anchor Steam and started from there and said, what do we like about it? What's the thing that we would do a little different? And there's not really much you should do different. I mean, it's a very unique style.
I think yours is a little maltier, maybe?
A little bit maltier, for sure.
Which I love.
Yeah.
So you keep asking us about our rusty Anchor that we found and everything.
Yeah.
Your job is you get these guests in on this great show that you do with the Brewers Network is to start asking around about Anchor Steam and give us some answers on what's going on.
You got it.
What's up with that rusty Anchor?
Yeah. You got it. Yeah. Next episode is Rusty Anchor.
Yeah. Is it Anchor Steam? Is it one found in the Strait?
Right.
We'll find out.
Tune in and find out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I cut you off there about Yardbird.
Oh no, I was going to say this is this actually came out of a program that we have, and we've got a beer club, all right, and it's called the Yardbird Beer Club. And so we're wine guys, so we come from the wine world, and one of the things that's super, not super unique, but that's really riveting about the wineries is they have wine clubs. And you get your pickups, but it's about the parties, it's about the events you can go to. And so, we wanted to bring that model over to the beer space. Smart. So we created our Yardbird Beer Club because a Yardbird was what they called the civilians on Mare Island. So all of the enlisted would say, "Oh, that's just a Yardbird over there," and it was kind of like a not so.
It wasn't a compliment.
It wasn't a compliment. Yeah.
They were workers too, I assume.
The workers, the workers on the island,
but
on
not enlisted.
Yardbird.
Okay,
kind of just birds in the yard from the shipyard. They're the
got it
non-military folks that were doing it, but they were Yardbirds with pride. Like they would say, "I'm a Yardbird." They'd say it all the time.
There's Facebook groups of I was a Yardbird on this shipyard, and so when we were coming up with our beer club, we were like, we got to call them the Yardbirds. They're part of our company and helping us grow. And so one of the things that we do is a Brewer's Bootcamp, and where we invite in around 12 of our Yardbirds, and we brew a beer. And so when we did this California Common, we were looking at all of the beers we'd already done. What can we do different? And we hadn't done a steam beer yet. And so we invited our loyal Yardbirds in and brewed this up, worked on the recipe. And I think it's been a great addition to the lineup. And
did they kind of taste along with you, like samples, like Anchor? And
we had brought Anchor out for that day, so they could see kind of where we were starting from versus where we're going to go. And it's just a really great way to get your customer further into what you're doing. They have a touch point. Matter of fact, the first Brewers Boot Camp we did, that was
Benny Suggs.
That was Benny Suggs, exactly.
Yeah, we had the naming of Benny Suggs was super fun. They came in. I think we were a little bit more elaborate. We said, okay, here's 3 different styles we could make, and we did a tasting with them. They chose red ale.
They chose a red ale.
So then we did another tasting with multiple red ales, so they could kind of pick a style of recipe they wanted, and then Ryan was going to work on the recipe with them and everything. And then we had a whole thing. We're like, all right, well, we're going to explain to you how we name beers. And honestly, they were very interested in that.
Sure.
And I was like, well, this is how our mind works is, okay, it's a red ale. So we've got kind of red to go on. Mm-hmm. We're going to go down to the foundation. We're just going to talk to Barbara and Joyce. We're going to say, hey, what do you got from Mare Island history that's red, that has a red theme, that is red. If I say red, what do you think of? And what's funny is Barbara and Joyce, they don't have a marketing bone in their body. I mean, they're the most literal human beings you'll ever talk to. And so they'll start throwing out things that are just not funny. And then
communism.
Almost, yeah.
Right.
Almost inevitably, as soon as I sort of say, well, thank you, that was great, and I get up and start to walk out, they'll lob something over at me as I'm walking out. And so I was sitting and talking to them, and they had talked about the lead-based paint that they used to paint on the side of the ships that would keep them from rusting and all this stuff because it was red. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's a great path to go down.
And then you had to tell him like what this program, the Brewers Bootcamp.
So I'm explaining. I'm like, yeah. So these people are part of a beer club. They come in. They're learning how to brew with Ryan, and they're making suggestions. She's like, all right. And then as I'm getting up and walking out of the room, Joyce is like, yeah, that's kind of like the beneficial the Benny Suggs program back on the shipyard. And I'm like, turn around, and sit back down. I'm like, so what is Benny Suggs? And so it was this system on the island and I guess this still exists in the Navy, is my understanding. I'm not positive about that, but I've heard. And they have basically a suggestion box, and it's a beneficial suggestions department. And people fill out these sheets and say, and Joyce had won one. Joyce was probably in her late 70s when I'm talking to her about this part. And Joyce is like, yeah, I won a beneficial suggestion once. And I think it was an ashtray and as a gift.
Of
and
course.
She is not a smoker even. But she stood in this gigantic shop. It still stands on Mare Island. And the doors are always open at either end because it's massive. And the wind was whipping down, and she was in charge of some paper. She would have all this paperwork, and it would blow in the wind all the time. So she made a beneficial suggestion on a piece of paper to drop some plastic sheets down on either side, basically like when you drive a forklift through at the cold box, it's like slitted plastic sheets, whatever, to knock the wind down to keep her papers from blowing around. And that was a beneficial suggestion. It was reviewed by the Benny Suggs committee, and they said that's a great idea. We're going to enact it. Here's your ashtray, and I think $20 or something like that. And I'm like, this is perfect. So I go back and Ryan, we got our name. It has nothing to do with red. It has to do with beneficial suggestions. We're going to call it Benny Suggs.
I love this story. I almost stopped you as I do to try to elaborate on the story. Like, wait, you got to tell me who Benny Suggs is first. We can't tell the story.
There's a coda to that. Is that there's an admiral, or was he an admiral?
Well, there was a guy who it was his job to award these suggestions with different, and so they would always call him Benny Suggs. Like that was the name of the guy who had it. And actually, we have two very loyal Yardbirds have been with us from the very beginning, Sean and Mary Kate.
Oh, yeah. They're the best.
Mary Kate's uncle held the title of Benny Suggs at one point, and so every year when we release this beer, they come over to the brewery with the whole family who still mostly live in Vallejo and cheers to their Benny Suggs. They'll have a picture on the table. It's actually pretty incredible.
Yeah. And huge shout out to Sean and Mary Kate. They are, so the Yardbird Beer Club is, straightforward on one hand. You get 3 shipments of beer a year. A couple things, we modeled this after kind of our wine club background that we both knew. It's very different. Wine is, $50, $60, $70 a bottle. And so when you ship it and it costs you $5 a bottle, people don't blink at that. Beer, on the other hand, a whole case costs you, $80. You don't want to spend $60 shipping that beer. So shipping beer is kind of an interesting thing.
And can you guys only ship in California?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Just for listeners, if you want to sign up, you can sign up, I assume.
You can absolutely sign up. We'd love to have you. And so what it led itself to, those wine clubs are very popular for having big pickup parties and things you can go to.
Yeah.
And we're like, we definitely got to do that. So we started doing these Yardbird pickup parties, and we started right out of the chute. It was.
I think that it was fall 2015 when we did
so it was about a year in.
Party.
Yeah, a little bit over a year in. And I'll never forget the party, though, because, we only had 30.
There was at best 30 beer club members.
And we wanted it to look full. And so we just started inviting some people for free that weren't Yardbirds, because we're like, we need at least 55 people in here. This is super early on in what we're doing. And I remember, because it was somewhat organic, we were just in there having this party, and everybody's picking up their first shipment. And these are some of our most, Sean and Mary Kate were there, Jim Murkowski's there.
Was there.
This is some of our most dedicated folks, and they come out. And kind of on a lark, I'm like, we've got these cornhole setups. Let's set them up. And we didn't even have, the tap room was so small at that time. We didn't even have 27 feet, which I think is the cornhole. Don't ask me how I know that. I know they're 27 feet apart.
He's the ref.
And so we set them up, and then with a marker on like a window, we just drew a little NCAA March Madness bracket, basically. And
nice.
Who knew how competitive cornhole is? And so these people they're drinking and they're playing, and by the end of it, there's 2 teams playing against each other, and everybody's gathered around, and they're screaming like it is Game 7 of the World Series. The whole thing was off the hook, and we're like, we are on to something here. And so we've been doing, It's basically 2 a year of Yardbird parties ever since then. And they have become legendary. They've been so much fun to put on. It's my favorite time because all of our best customers typically show up. I mean, maybe not every single party, but they come out. And they're always kind of themed and always have a game. So it's
I've been to one, and there was a cornhole tournament happening, and people were into it. I came late, or I would have participated myself. I love me some cornhole. You guys had live music happening.
Yep.
Food, of course. And I was impressed, and a great turnout. And then, of course, like we kind of always say, you're sitting on the waterfront.
Yeah.
So I'm almost surprised that you have to do anything because it's also just nice to be sitting on the waterfront.
I tell you, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, what's this game going to be? What's the theme? And I mean, luckily we now have a team around us that can keep giving us more ideas.
Sure.
We were like, can we do cornhole again?
It would get stressful there for a while.
And to be quite honest with you, the games got pretty aggressive and pretty far-fetched, which we can go into. So
now, does the party happen 3 times a year for pickup or once?
It's twice a year.
Twice, okay.
So, yeah, so we do 3 different pickups, a spring, a fall, and then we do what we call Our 3 Wise Men, which are 3 special bottles we released for the holiday, and that's more open to the public and more kind of just a gift box.
Nice.
So that's kind of a holiday open house, if you will, is our 3rd one. But that's open to the public. You can come in. We got face painting for the kids and stuff, and it's a lot lower key.
Sure,
it's not the giant blowout that the Yardbird parties are when we do it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm eager to talk more about Yardbird parties actually because they're really, really fun.
All right. Well, if you want to get more information or sign up to be a Yardbird, go to mareislandbrewingco.com. Click on the link there, and you can learn all about it. All right, guys. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, more about Mare Island Brewing Company. Hang in there. Here at the Battleships to Beer podcast, we love getting listener questions, and we get lots of them. So we're going to do our best to answer them here on this and future episodes of the show. If you've got questions, send them to podcast@mareislandbrewingco.com. And now, here are some listener questions we've received. We are back with another Mare Island Q&A session with Ryan and Kent. This one comes from an anonymous listener. I know your Yardbirds releases are popular. How often do you release them, and are they the same beers each time, or are there new beers included?
Ryan, I think you should take this one.
Yeah, sure. So, the Yardbird Club is our beer club, and actually we have 3 releases on the year. We have our spring and fall release, which are the bigger releases, more beers in the case, and the spring has the backing of the Murphy the Pig Saison beer, and then the fall is backed by the General Order 99 barrel-aged porter. And then we have our holiday release, which is Our 3 Wise Men, that has a beer named after Admiral Farragut, Don Vallejo for Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo, and then Chesty Stout. But as far as like the different beers, they are different. In the spring and fall, we try to put in things that are seasonally appropriate, but then also we release at least one new beer each of those releases, so that we can have a good multi-pack in there. But they do change at each release. The only one that stays the same is the holiday pack. So, yeah.
All right. If you've got questions, send them into podcast@mareislandbrewingco.com, and you can hear yourself on a future episode. Now back to the show. Welcome back to Battleships to Beer, 10 years of Mare Island Brewing Company. And we're learning about the Yardbird program, but I think most importantly, we're learning about the Yardbird Parties, which you guys enjoy getting creative with. What else happens? It sounds like you guys are always searching for games and stuff to do.
There's definitely games. One of the things that we do anchor each of the parties is we got to have a great band. Got to have some good music.
Heck
and
yeah.
One of the things that I have been fortunate enough to partner with is an amazing Bay Area musician named Jimbo Scott. He, funny enough, I met him before the whole brewing company, and I did a backyard little music party, kind of like a VH1 behind the music, talk about your songs.
Oh, nice.
And he and I just have become friends since then. So we're starting the brewing company, and we decided we want to have these beer club parties. And I was like, I think I got a guy would be perfect for this. And from that first party, Jimbo and Grover Anderson played together at that first party. And now Jimbo actually runs all the music for our program, and he's in multiple bands, and is just a great, fantastic human being and musician.
I just remember Grover and he had played at Freight and Salvage like just a couple days before. Like, how the hell did we get guys of this caliber up here playing to our 70 Yardbirds out on the waterfront?
But after they saw that first cornhole tournament and everything that was unfolding, they were like, all right, let us know when you need to play. But I got to say, the second game that we ever did, we called it Hungry Human Hippos.
Okay.
Because we had to find out, okay, we can't just do cornhole every time. We got to have something that's a fun part of it. And so I don't remember how we came up with it, but it was at the end of the day, we ended up with, those dollies that you get on to get under your car to do work or whatever.
Furniture dolly.
Dolly.
Yeah, they're furniture dollies.
And so we got some of those. We made sure that it was comfortable enough to have somebody sit or lay on it. And what it was is we had those balls from a ball pit.
Yeah.
And we had cordoned off out in our lobby of the Fairy Tap Room, cordoned off a little arena, and where there were 4 teams, and each team had somebody that was the pusher and somebody that was the catcher. Yeah. And the catcher would lay down onto the furniture dolly, and they would have a basket. And what would happen was Kent was the referee. This was the first time I made you wear the zebra shirt. And Kent would be in the middle, and he would release all of these balls out into the middle, and then these 4 people the pusher would push their catcher out into the middle
by their feet
and roll them out, and however many balls they could get back into their corner dictated who won. It was a spectacle.
I would love to do this.
We had helmets for them.
Yeah,
It was.
I was going to say, our insurance writers now would probably be like, you guys want to do what?
Yeah.
But
that's why we don't tell them everything.
that was probably an awesome one. And then we had to top that. And so that one, I believe, was
torpedoes, I think, is the one.
The torpedoes.
And I don't remember if that was exactly the next one or not, but the torpedo sticks out to me because and this is in the early days. We didn't really have any staff to work on this stuff with us. Now we actually have a whole group. They sit down and we come up with these ideas together. But back then it's like, all right, Ryan, we got to top this. We got to come up with something. Yeah. And this will bring back some of the cast of characters, in fact, and the whole thing. So I'm like, all right, we got this idea. What if we floated a pyramid of 55-gallon drums about 50, 60 feet out into the strait on a barge? And then we'll get 3-person water balloons where one person's holding one side, one person's holding the other, and the middle person's pulling it back like you would at the beach or something like that.
Yeah.
And you get, what was it, 10 water balloons that you could, we used apples because at first we were going to use water balloons. Then we were like, this is not environmentally okay. We can't release all this latex into thing. So we're going to use apples. So we went out and found the cheapest apple, like whole apples, and we got a whole white bin of them. It was a crazy number of apples. And you had to we intentionally made it 3-person teams because people show up at the Yardbird party in 2s. And so if you wanted to play, you had to go find somebody else from another thing. And to this day, there's people who are like, oh, we met playing torpedoes or we met playing Hungry Hippos or whatever it is. And so we had this whole thing, and it was like you got 9 shots, and then you got the golden apple, which was the last one, which was worth 10. And so we got Jeff Wallace, who was our welder that we talked about in an episode previously. And we go down and we're like, all right, Wallace, we got to explain this idea to you. And he's just looking at us like, this is just classic stuff. And of course he's like, well, you get me the drums and I'll do this. So on the island is a metal recycler. And so we went down there. I'm like, hey, do you have 5 55-gallon drums? And they're like, yeah, well, what do you need them for? Because they're thinking food grade or something. I'm like, well, we're going to float them. And then, I'm telling the whole story. And they're like, oh, we'll just give them to you. So we get these things, we weld them up. They're still sitting in the warehouse out there. We actually resurrected this years later as an encore. But I'll never forget that. Do you remember who won that one? Do you remember?
I do. It was the Wolf.
It was the Wolf.
Of course, the Wolf.
Like he's threaded through every one of these episodes, but I mean, that was when he showed up. He had been, it was like 2 years in, and he had done a lot of work. And he's like, man, you guys keep talking about this beer club. I need to sign up. And so he signed up and he met 2 other people there. He was the odd man out on the team.
One of them was.
So what was the object?
Sorry, we didn't discuss. Yeah. Ultimately, you got to fire 10 apples at this pyramid of barrels out in the water. And going back up, we tried to figure out what was the right distance that they could hit maybe 6 out of 10 if they were really good, because we had to keep it competitive. So Ryan and me and Cody at the time and a couple of us, we go out in this field and we set up a box like 30 yards away and we practice firing off these apples at it, and then we move it back, and then we finally figure out the right distance. So literally they're standing on the waterfront side on the concrete, aiming these water balloons, and they get 10 shots at this, and you get a number of points as the number of times you hit this thing. And the beauty of it was they were empty 55-gallon drums, and when it hit it, oh my God, it rang out like you would not believe. And I'll never forget. So Wolf was the odd man out. He partnered up with my son's 5th grade teacher, who was a math teacher, who had brought a friend of his who was a physics and archer. He was like a professional archer. And I saw them when we were trying to describe the game to everybody, and everybody's like trying to figure out sign up. And I'm just like you. I'm trying to explain what it is, which is not easy to do. Frankly, we had to like do it as a demonstration. And you could see them in their minds, like calculating like the angles. Like, do you get this more acute or more obtuse in how you set it up? And they're like, yeah, Wolf, you need to be the one who's pulling it back because this he's a monster. 6'4", he's wearing a kilt, all this stuff. And they go out there and hit 10 out of 10, probably every round that they did. All
so
the way
you're
through.
slingshotting them, basically.
You're slingshotting these apples. And then on top of that, we're like, well, this is still not 100% environmentally sensitive just because we're sending a bunch of organic matter and things. So I remember it was Ace and somebody else were in kayaks. And in between times, they would go out there with these little fish nets and kayaks, and they would scoop all the apples out of the water and go around and bring them back to us. And honestly, the whole thing we got the trophy out. It all worked out great. But we got a call from the ferry.
This is what I'm waiting for.
We got a call from the ferry the next day. And as the ferry had been going by, some team that had a little bit too much of whatever our Yardbird release was that year. I don't think they actually hit the ferry, but they fired a couple shots across the bow.
Yeah.
So the next time we did this, which was like 5, 6, 7 years later, we actually did it on land so that it wouldn't.
And we used water balloons.
And we did use water balloons. Yeah. And then we had, I think my son was in 8th grade. We had him and his buddies go out and pick up all the latex that was on there.
Nice, yeah.
One of the things I want to give a shout out to the Straits of Mare Island Rowing Association because we do a lot of work with them, but they were out there as well, and they placed the barrels, the barge out there, and anchored it down appropriately, and it was a spectacle.
Yeah, so that was, and I thought maybe that's where you were going about the ferry talking to you is. Sorry for the boring question about logistics, but do you have to call somebody and ask if we can float a barge?
Maybe now.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm assuming it's not out in the middle of the strait, right? It's close to you. Okay, fair.
Third of the way across the strait is the ideal distance.
I mean, we were young and dumb.
You just got to go ask for forgiveness.
It's exactly the route we went.
Okay.
And,
right.
But again, people talk about that game, especially when we brought it back with water balloons. They're like, oh, you're doing it again. Why isn't it in the water? And we're like, well, we got a lot more eyes on us.
I absolutely love the torpedoes theme. I mean, it's so great.
We got out of the call. We not only got a call from the ferry, I also got a call from the economic development director at the city. It's like, can you explain to me what was going on last Saturday? And I was like, how about I just don't explain it, but we don't do it again? And he was like, all right, that sounds just fine.
There we go.
They say like, it's funny because you get bigger, you get a bigger target on your back in a lot of ways. And so when we were young, when we were small, it's like nobody really knew. We were kind of making our own
way.
Wild
West.
Yeah, now it's a little bit more regulated that we have to be.
You know what's a bummer about that is you lose a little of your edge. It's fun when you're just kind of, hey, is it going to be fun? Are we going to hurt anybody? No. Then let's go for it.
Right.
Oh, well. It does sound great, though. So you guys have a pretty creative way of attacking these parties.
I think we already talked about the pigeon race we did that one time. Yeah, so the homing pigeons.
So, just tell it again, just briefly. This one's pretty fascinating.
So that's when we released the Beer 3 Pigeons IPA. We had a fancier that lived in Napa who used to work on Mare Island. He had homing pigeons, and so for that game, we did pigeon racing. And so where our Yardbirds would bet on who would win, and that was a hoot.
I know, and I forget if I asked this. The results came in while everyone was still there, or so didn't take like a day?
He had a camera set up at his coop back at his house, so we would know, or he had some kind of tracking system.
He had a camera, and this is high tech these days. They're flying with a little RFID on their leg.
Okay.
And as they land on the platform, the first one to land on the platform wins the race. That's how these things work. So they were taking off from us, but we were all just kind of waiting for the word, and we had some people could actually see the camera, if I remember right, but it was all there, and that's where, like, when the pigeon didn't make it back, when Kevin didn't make it back, we kind of just kept moving on and doing other races, and other people, they're following along on this app that we have, and they're like, wait, this one hasn't come. Kevin didn't come in.
How long are we talking here, approximately, did it take the pigeons?
I think it was like 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's so fast.
13 minutes was the record one, I'll never forget, and he came the best. So this is, I was telling you, we were out in the field when we were testing torpedoes, when we were doing this, and people are looking at us like, what the hell are these guys doing out there? With the pigeons, we had to get him to come down, and he brought the pigeons down on like 3 or 4 occasions, so we could just kind of see what, like, we didn't know what this was going to,
what are the logistics?
Were they going to poop all over everything? Like, what's going to happen? And the first time he released them, They took off the absolute wrong direction, flying south, not north, and started spiraling up and up in the air. And I'm like, this isn't good. This is not what we had in mind.
It's not gonna work.
I envisioned him like, racing back, and he's like, oh, it means a hawk is out here. Oh. And so the thing is, hawks can only attack or good at attacking from above. So the pigeons, if they see a hawk, the first thing they do is just try to get altitude as fast as they can. And so then the first time he came down, he didn't tell us he was down there. And he released him in the parking lot. And I'm like, this isn't where you're going to be releasing him. You have to come out front on this whole thing. So we have it's extensive testing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because I've kind of experienced that with events we do. You have this great idea, but one little thing could just make it a total dud. It goes from great to dud fast.
Well, we talked about Ryan's like, you got to get it. Kent, you got to put on a
referee shirt.
And so I think it might have been pre-Amazon. Somehow I got a hold of one at the time. And I wear this thing, but you have to have a ref because these people, they're intense. They want to win, and they're asking all the rules, and they want to cheat and all this stuff. And so the last rule, we put up the rules on every single argument, and we put up a rule at the end is any arguing with the ref and you're disqualified.
There we go.
That's
ref has final say.
Love it.
Yeah.
And there's a trophy.
Yeah, we have our we call it our Yardbird trophy on that one. It's 3 submarines. So they used to, what they would do is, I guess when you would retire or if you worked on a submarine, you would get a model of that submarine. And so we, our first tap handles, we modeled after those submarines, and we took 3 of them, and now it's 3 submarines on an old piece of wood from the coal shed when we refurbished it, and it's coveted. I mean, the one thing Jim Rykowski, he wants to be on that trophy, and and I know Sean and Mary Kate are 3-peats on
3-peats on it.
Yeah, they've got 3 times their names are on there. The Indiana Street Hustlers, that's their name. So.
And to tie the threads together, we were like, okay, first people win. We were like, we got to get them a trophy. We kind of designed this trophy. I think you built it, or Matty Handles helped out as well, if I remember right.
Correct.
And so we build this trophy, and we're like, well, we got to get this etched, somewhere. So we go up to this place called Doc's Trophy Shop, and I got to give a call out to Doc's. It's in Napa, and Napa has gentrified to the umpteenth degree and everything else. Doc's is this like awesome throwback. I don't know how long he's been there, but he does trophies and engraving. And you go in, and it's like, you go in, he kind of answers the door when he wants to. He's got this cute little dog. He worked on Mare Island. So I'm giving him this trophy, and he's like, Yardbird? And I'm like, yeah. And he starts telling me he worked on Mare Island and everything. So he charges us like $5 or something to etch the name on there each time. Yeah. And the beauty is we just finished, I can't remember how many parts, it was 17 or something like that, 16 I think we're at. And we just filled up all of the sides of the trophy. Okay. And so now we either have to add another level like the Stanley Cup, or we have to like reprint it in really tiny print and keep going. So, we never knew we were, of course. We did think we'd get this far, but like when you certainly hope. You certainly hope on the whole thing.
Oh, you got to add a level. I love the idea of this going Stanley Cup.
Yeah. All right, that's the decision.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
Great idea.
And I'll give one of my favorite moments of the Yardbird Party, Yardbird Games is we did Rock'em Sock'em Robots one time. Okay. Which was a technical disaster. It was so hard to do this. First, we started with the original games where you have the little handheld part, but people would, I don't know if you ever played it as a kid, but you'd end up wrenching the thing off the table. It was a mess, and there was no way we could come up with an actually competitive Rock'em Sock'em Robot game. So then we find these things off Amazon that have motion sensors on them. So instead of touching them, you're waving your hands, and if you wave your hands on the side of them at a certain cadence, it'll throw a punch depending on which side you're waving your hand. Okay. And so, we got these barrels set up on the waterfront. Jimbo's playing music like mad. Everybody's had a couple nuclear sandwiches, so they're already well lubricated on the whole thing. And they've got this little game in front of them, and they're just waving their hands back and forth, trying to bop the. It's just like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Your head's going to pop up. But there's this woman who's playing it with us, and I don't think she'd mind that we're saying this. She's the most lovely woman. Bonnie, thank you. And Bonnie has one leg. She's in a wheelchair, and she has one leg. And I was at the sign-in because this is what I do at the Yardbird parties. I got my referee shirt on. I'm at the sign-in. I'm trying to explain to people how this game works. Here comes Bonnie, and she's like, "I want to play," and I'm like, "Well, hell, I didn't really create one that was at this level or whatever." She's like, "No, I can stand on one leg and do this or whatever." And I'm like, I love it. Awesome. So we modified it just slightly, whatever. So Bonnie gets up there, and she gets 32 teams playing this game. Okay. She wins the first round. She wins the second round. Yeah. She goes and has a beer, comes back and wins the third round. Yes. And damn it, if she didn't win the whole thing, and we have this picture, we always take a picture with us with the trophy. And We're having such a good time. The people, like the last 3 teams is usually what it is. And she's there holding the Yardbird trophy in her wheelchair and the joy on her face. And she turned to me and she's like, something like, I never thought a one-legged woman would win a boxing match. Is basically what she said. The whole thing. It was just magical. So
that sounds like a T-shirt for her with that quote on it.
Oh, yeah, so great.
Bonnie and Steve, same ones. They've been Yardbird since the very beginning, and it's just always great to have that inclusivity to have her on the trophy as well. But she earned it. She damn earned it.
Oh, she totally earned it on that one. That was another one that kind of missed. At a certain point, some of them weren't working very well, so we had to kind of get them off to the side, and everybody was sweating because they were gesticulating so hard trying to get this thing to work. They don't always come off perfect, but that one had a perfect ending.
So I love, you guys started this by saying, it came from the wine world, but turned into something completely different, and you're getting what the wine world really wants out of it, and that is like the participation, the association, really feeling like you're part of Mare Island. That's what the wine world really wants. And I think you guys are doing it in such a unique way. You're getting that tenfold. I mean, already they're fans of yours. Already they love the beer. But now getting to join together and compete, it builds a second level of camaraderie, I think. So you guys are nailing it that way.
We also do other events as well that we try to make always Yardbird exclusive. So, one of the things we've done special, we did what was that, the King's Feast dinner, the Winter Feast.
Yeah, the Winter Feast.
The Winter Feast where, we have amazing culinary team with Chef David, and we put together this super long table down the middle of the coal shed, and he put on, it was a 4-course spread. And
quail.
There's just... So dinners are always fun. We do a seafood boil every year where we have like 2 massive paella pans we borrow from Mick up at Zuzu in Napa.
There's a guy playing the metal drums over in the corner.
Oh, yeah, the calypso drum. Playing that. And then, chef's got the full seafood boil out in front that then we just dump in the table in front of you and have a cut bread with that. And then
nice.
The one time we went to the Giants game, didn't we?
Giants game?
Yeah.
One of our Yardbirds is Charles Lamelli, the tax assessor for our area. And it was funny. We went to the Giants game and it was fun. We all took the ferry over together. We're having beers on the way. We're having beers over there. And I'm sitting next to him. I said, I'm never sure I've ever caught your last name. And so he introduces himself and I'm like, I know that name from somewhere. And he's like, yeah, I'm the guy who sends you your tax bill every year.
So I didn't want you to know.
Super nice guy.
And come to find out, he was actually in that first Brewers Bootcamp.
He was. He did the Brewers Bootcamp with us.
But yeah, we got the tax assessor on. And
that's great.
Yeah, but we do. The one thing with the club is you're always trying to figure out how to keep it like exciting and fresh and get new folks in. And so we started doing like Thirsty Thursdays, where it's the second Thursday of every month. We switch around to each one of the locations, and then there's some specials for them. And then we get to go out and say hi and drink some beers and rub elbows. And the club is fun. Super fun.
It sounds like it. Once again, you go to mareislandbrewingco.com. You can find out about the club and you can sign up right online, or do you got to go into the
You can sign up online.
Online?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a tab up there for a beer club and a lot of little perks that we got to add in, some discounts here and there. But yeah. One of the things actually, too, that we do with each one of the releases is we got a hold of an old World War II dog tag machine.
Of course you did.
Yeah, of course we did. And so somebody in town had said, hey, I've got this dog tag machine. And of course, as it kind of does, they say, where do we take it? And they say, Mare Island Brewing Company. And so I answer the phone and I say, I'd love to come take a look at it. And this is built like things were built back then. It's beefy. It's incredible. But I didn't know if the damn thing would work.
It weighs so much.
Yeah. So I actually, I enlisted one of our regulars, Ralph, and Phil. They both worked on Mare Island, and Phil actually was the crane operator. So he was he operated the massive cranes there. And I said, Phil, can you come take this, give it a once over? He said, just all I had to do was oil it up. He plugged it in, and that thing's
wow,
just perfectly built. So every release, we actually do a dog tag that comes in every box that says it's it says MIBC, and then whether it's the spring or fall release, the year, and then there's a number attached to it. And then they can utilize that dog tag in the tap rooms to get their discounts or just to say that, hey, I'm a Yardbird.
Right.
And now people show up, and it's almost like, I don't know, like
they're wearing them.
The ears in Vietnam or whatever around the neck where they have like all of the dog tags.
Oh, gosh,
And you can always, it kind of helps us out as well, too, because we're like, that's a Yardbird right there.
Right.
They're a longtime supporter, so that's also super fun that we incorporate.
Man, I'm signing up just for the dog tags. That sounds super fun.
Dog tags.
For sure.
All right. Well, make sure you go sign up, mareislandbrewingco.com, and you can find out all about it there. All right, I think it's time for a surprise question.
Uh-oh.
Right? This week it's going to be Ken to Ryan.
Yes. So mine's a softball too, but I am curious. It's not so much a question as open-ended. I would like you to explain to me and to our listeners why you are so obsessed with 3D printing.
Ooh, good one.
And let me preface this by
I was
saying,
going to help you preface this. Go on.
Well, I'll let Ryan do it. So, Ryan, tell us about your inventory of equipment of 3D printers, and don't hold back.
Well, how
much time do we have left?
Yeah, let me also just set the scene. This inventory of equipment has its own room in the brewery. It's like, this isn't like, there's like a machine over there. So just listeners know that this is a real thing.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Talk about my man cave. Forget it.
Yeah.
Here I was worried the whole time about what my answer would be, and now I'm worried about how much time we have left, like I said. So, well, when the pandemic hit, we all remember that, a nice little COVID, the first check came in for the stimulus checks came in, and I was thinking, what can I put this on? And I've always been what I'd like to think is creative. And I'd seen some 3D printers, and I was like, I'm going to buy a 3D printer. Mm-hmm. And I personally bought a 3D printer for the house. I've got 2 young boys, and it's kind of fun to make little trinkets and things. But what I really found out quickly is they are so handy to fix a lot of things or to make the things that we're already doing in our business cheaper. So the signs that you have around, the no alcohol beyond this point, you go and they're like $19 a piece. Mm-hmm. Well, I can print them for like 37 cents. Okay. And so it is an economical solution. But one of the things is I kept finding all of these things that I wanted to do for work and utilizing my one at home. So I came to work one time and said, Kent, we got to get a 3D printer for work. And he's like,
no,
yeah. He's like,
no way. Not going to do
it. And I was like, look, here's what we can do, and showed different things. And then he's like, no. And so then I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to design something that makes sense for us to have one at work.
There you go.
I designed our wholesale tap handles. And so I make all of our tap handles on our 3D printers. And once I showed Ken, he's like, okay. And I did the spreadsheet and broke it down. To get a new tap handle made,
they're expensive.
It's like $2,500 just in the R&D process.
Yeah.
And then once you get through that hurdle and you pick on something you like, it's like $30 a handle. Well, my R&D process was me sitting on the couch at home while my wife's wondering what the hell I'm doing, drinking an Ivy Bells or War Bond. And I came up with what I think is an awesome tap handle that's distinguishable. And I showed Ken, I'm like, look, I can make these for $7 a piece.
You're right.
And he's like, done. And so
that's all you had to say.
And then next thing you know, Kent's always coming to my office. He's like, hey, I got an idea for if anyone says 3D printing, my ears perk up. I turn around and I'm like, I'm your man. And so even we had mentioned the Pedal Fest, I think, in one of our previous episodes, and I was making the medals for the Pedal Fest, and but it's definitely something I enjoy.
How many machines now?
Yeah,
well,
you notice how he dodged that question? Totally dodged it.
So I originally had one at home and got one for work, and then when Kent wanted to do all of these medals for the Pedal Fest, I was like, I'm going to need another 3D printer. So bought another one for work. So I had 2 at work and 1 at home.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to get this one that does multicolor and everything. So we now have 3 at work, and I bought another one for home. So I have 5 total. I was
going to say, it's been a while, but my memory is no less than 5. But maybe I only saw 3 at work.
The crazy part is these things are always going.
Yeah.
You will not go into that room, which also happens to be Ryan's office and our lab at the same time. You will not go in that room without him going in. What's funny is, the Zoom era, Ryan's in there on Zoom, and every time he joins a Zoom that I'm in also, you can just see the 3D printer going back and forth and back. And I'm just wondering what all these other people are there trying to figure out what that thing is.
Yeah.
This is an homage to Ryan, because I'll admit, this is Ryan Crombie and Fitch, our merchandise, as we refer to it, as Ryan Crombie and Fitch. Uh-huh. When Ryan came to me, I'm like, you're so full of it. There's no way we're going to sell it much. And same thing on the 3D. And now I'm like, you need a new 3D printer? Just buy it. Just fine. We're all good.
Make it happen.
But I'm at home. We're having this massive ant problem at my house. This has nothing to do with the brewery. And I'm this horrible ant problem. And we have all these new kittens that this feral mom dropped off at our place. And so the kittens can't get near the ant bait, and they can get into anywhere we're at. I'm like, Ryan. So I sketched something out. I'm like, I need something that's going to cover the ant bait and keep it's got to be kitten proof and all stuff. I mean, it was probably an hour and a half. He dropped that thing off at my house.
Oh,
he's like, here's the first prototype for you. And I put it together and put it out there. I kind of kitten tested it. And I'm like, Ryan, he got me 3 more by the end of the day and 2 more the next day. And my whole house is ant free. And I don't know, what was that? Like $8 worth of ant bait.
I think it was like $2.30 at best.
That's so great.
You know, kind of a funny little quip. There was an article I read this weekend that kind of strange to get into it, but that they said they've been doing studies of guys that have passed away of their testicles.
Yeah.
And that they found microplastics in every one of the testicle samples from across the world.
Sure.
And so I can only imagine how many microparticles I'm carrying down here. So, you know, I'm in my office working, and these things are just probably streaming off microplastics back there. And, you know, we're really working hard on being sustainable at the same time churning out plastic pieces.
But, you know, honestly,
I will say, though, you are cutting down on the mass manufacturing process at the same time.
I'm serious. Like, at first, I could not figure out the utilitarian aspect of this. I was like, well, Ryan's he's a little ADD. There is a little bit of like, Ryan needs like 6 plates spinning at all times.
Come from waiting tables
for him to focus.
Right.
Yeah, and I've finally discovered this is like he does better if there's music playing while he's trying to work or whatever. So this is kind of like his thing that keeps his brain going or whatever. I mean, I don't want to put you on the couch here, but that's I think that's accurate. But you know what I discovered after a little while was like, remember the drain in the brewery?
Oh yeah,
it kept getting gummed up, and so we could have spent $1,000 on retrofitting this drain with this Zern metal, thing or whatever. Or within like 20 minutes, he had printed up this thing that was perfectly sized and slotted to go down there to keep this drain from backing up. I can't really describe it, and my business mind's, I'm like, Ryan, can we sell these things? Like, how do we get this thing going?
He did say to me one day, he's like, we got to figure out something that you're making that we can monetize a little bit here. And I tell you, I've been thinking we do sell a retail version of that tap handle.
Oh yeah,
from our locations, and people love it. Just you got a home kegerator and you want a nice little Ryan Gibbons Mare Island Brewing Company designed tap handle, you can go on our website.
But I love the dentist that Ryan and I we both go to the same dentist, and he's really into he was into drones, as was Ryan for a while, and then he was into 3D printing. Like, he and Ryan are like buddies on all this stuff, and Ryan's like, I'm going down to what was it, 3D printing? So
again, I'm getting deep here, but the printer that I have is called a Prusa, and they're made in Czechoslovakia. And apparently they do a meetup in different cities around the world where us 3D printing nerds get together, and we kind of all pay homage to this guy that we're like super stoked on his equipment. And that's the other thing. I don't know anybody else that 3D prints, and when I found out my dentist does, I mean, he and I are just like all the time sending pictures back and forth, and we've learned so much from it. But I said to him, hey, I just got this email. There's going to be a meetup in San Francisco. Do you want to go with me? And it was like, man.
Like a date with
put your suspenders on, but get your pocket protector and bring your 3D stuff. So I actually brought one of our tap handles to the meetup, and just in case, I don't know, just to show him. And actually brought one to give to the guy, and he accepted it. But they would allow people to come up and kind of show off their 3D printing stuff.
Right.
And so I got up and showed it, and literally for about 15 minutes, people were like, what? You guys are, I love Mare Island Brewing Company. You guys are making those with this printer? Yeah. Like, so it gave us a lot of clout.
And the way you described it to me is everybody else is like, look, I made this little toy for my kid, or I made this little like doodad or whatever. And it's like, Ryan actually made something functional, utilitarian,
right? Cost effective, and that helps brand our business.
But if you see anything that's like plastic and looks very, very ornamental and curated, sitting around the brewing company, it probably was printed in Ryan's office.
Yeah, I mean, I have young boys right now, and so Christmas, I love the old glass bulbs and everything on the tree. Yeah. None of that is in my house right now. It's all like 3D printed bulbs so that they survive year after year.
Oh, that's smart.
That stuff will come out.
Well, I know you guys have a kind of a planned list of names for these episodes, but I'm hereby changing the name of this one to 3D printed testicles.
I'm in. Yeah.
If you're ever listeners, if you ever want to talk to Ryan and be like, oh, it was in the episode, the 3D printed testicles one.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, truck nuts. Got it. Got it.
Thanks for indulging me on that one. I love listening to Ryan talk about this.
That was a long one.
Cop to his obsession.
You fed right into that. Like, as I said, we might even have to have 11 episodes this time.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. If people want to send in questions or comments, where does that go, Ryan?
I don't know if I want to say it now after that, but podcast at mareislandbrewingco.com. Maybe I'll 3D print it for you.
There you go. And, of course, you can go to mareislandbrewingco.com to find out more about the brewery, more about Mare Island, more about the Yardbird Club, and everything Mare Island.
Less about my testicles.
Yeah, I don't think there's a page for that yet. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We're a little more than halfway through this series, but we have so much more great stuff for you planned. So hit the follow button or the subscribe button on whatever podcast program you're using, and that'll make sure you get the next episode as soon as it goes up. You won't lose your place. You won't have to go digging around. You can find it right there. All right. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. If you want to see historical and other photos to events referenced in this podcast, head on over to the Mare Island Brewing Company website at mareislandbrewingco.com or check out the link in the show notes for this episode.